This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 277, Prospecting and Cold Calling for New Sales, an interview with the late, great Steve Kloyda.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers. And as you can tell, I am back from Europe after visiting my son's family in Germany. We visited quite a number of cities along the way. We did London and Paris and Munich and Prague and Lisbon. Oh, my goodness. It was a lot of traveling, but it was an awful lot of fun, too, getting back on the road with only a backpack. It was so enjoyable, and not for a minute did I let it bother me that I had totally screwed up promoting, or I should say publishing, all of those podcasts last month all at once. I was trying to be clever. I was trying to time them out, and the emails worked, but that didn't, and you might say that I'm an idiot, but I'm really not. This is not something I do all the time, so what happens, happens, and oh well. With that said, I have a sad thing I need to share. A good friend of mine, Steve Kloyda, he's been a guest here on Sales Babble, where he passed away last month while I was on holiday, while I was on vacation, and it really saddens me that this has happened to him and to his family. Steve was the host of the Get in the Door podcast, and he just came out with a new book. He just published a book called The Art of Prospecting, Your Goal to Get in the Door. I just got a copy of the book, and in fact, I just spoke with him, it was February or March, and we were laughing. He sounded very upbeat and very positive about some of the recovery stuff that he was working on. And I really wanted to get him on the podcast, but he didn't really feel like his health was up for it, but he said, Pat, we'll get to it. We'll get to it one of these days when I'm feeling better. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. And it looks like that's not going to happen. Yeah. So what I would like to do is to actually repeat an episode that I ran with him. The very first episode that he was on Sales Babble, episode 137. It was published on August 18th, 2015. And Steve gives some really terrific advice on prospecting and cold calling and things you can do to earn new sales. This is like timeless information. This is Steve at his best, leveraging on his years and years of experience in cold calling and his unbelievable and deep generosity in wanting to help the world and help sales professionals be more successful. Just a really great guy. And just a really great guy. So, with no further ado, let's run the recording. So, Steve, are you ready to babble?
I am ready to babble, Pat.
It was great meeting you at Podcast Movement, Steve, because if you recall, it was a huge honor for me to bump into you. I think I just turned to the right and I go, I'm just going to shake hands with the next strange person I see. And that was, well, I don't mean you're strange.
Thank you. Strange. I do look strange the older I get. And I'll tell you something, it's always, when I go to these events and somebody comes up to me and says, you're the guy.
Yeah.
You're him. And I just don't think of myself like that. I never know who I'm going to run into.
You're famous.
In my mind, Andy Warhol said, we'll all be famous for 15 minutes. And I'm wondering if my 15 minutes are up.
Maybe to let clue people in on what's happening here, you're actually a podcaster also.
Yes.
And you are you consider yourself the prospecting expert, prospectingexpert.com. Why do you call yourself that?
Well, I started out as a stockbroker in 1980, and I was given a phone, a desk, and a list of every business in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and a pat on the back and said, go get him, Tiger. With one exception. This gentleman, Tom Vanyo, had a sales meeting every Monday morning, and I gobbled up everything. And one of the things that he taught me how to do is, one, to connect with senior level executives, vice presidents, presidents of companies, CEOs, owners of companies. He taught me how to connect, educate what I was selling, and ask for the business. In my first 8 months, I opened up 180 new accounts, all on cold calls. And everything progressed from there. So when I left the business after 10 years and I started a company called Telemasters, what we did is we helped salespeople utilize the telephone to get in the door and get to the person that they needed to. Now, even in 1990, I mean, email really didn't start coming into play until about 93, 94, 95. So it was really the telephone. And over the past 25 years, I named myself the prospecting expert because, number one, that's what I love. I love the hunt, and I love teaching other people how to get in the door. So let me give you an example. A client of mine will say, okay, you got us in the door. Now, teach us how to do a PowerPoint. Teach us how to run the meeting. Teach us how to do a presentation. And I say, no, that's not what I do. And I've remained focused for the last 25 years. And then in 2010, I sold the Telemaster brand because I saw this trend. And I was out on Google one day, and I was just searching for prospecting tips, prospecting strategies, prospecting ideas. And I noticed there's about 250,000 searches a month for that term prospecting. And it so happened at that time, I was on an online course with Carrie Wilkerson, the Barefoot Executive, and she said, so what are you really, really good at? And I said, prospecting. And for me, it was a no-brainer to change the name of the company to the Prospecting Expert, and that's how I've arrived.
So why don't let's walk through these three things, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You said that it was about how to connect with a senior VP, how to educate them, and how to ask for the business.
Yes.
Well, let's walk through those.
Yes. Well, okay, so back when I started as a stockbroker, there was a telephone, you had a phone number, and potentially a name of a person. If I didn't have a name of the person and the gatekeeper answered the phone, good morning, XYZ company, how may I help you? I said, hi, I'm Steve Kloyda. I'd like to speak to the president of your company or the owner of your company. Could you tell me who that would be, please? Yeah, that's Joe Smith. Great. Will you transfer me? And Joe would pick up the phone. Now, 95% of the time, the gatekeeper would say, well, what is this call concerning? So I would work with the gatekeeper, and one of two things would happen. She would say, no, I'm not putting you through, or two, hold on 1 minute. And we really didn't, there was no voicemail back then. I mean, this is 1980, 81. There's no voicemail. So they would pick up, or she would say, I'm sorry, he's busy. He can't take your call right now. Now, once the senior executive, okay, again, it could have been a vice president. It could have been a president of a company. It could have been an owner of a company. Once they answered the phone, I'd say, hi, this is Steve Kloyda with XYZ Brokerage. Do you have a minute to talk? Now, no salesperson ever asked, do you have a minute to talk? Because you're giving them an out. Well, my mentor, Tom Vanyo, said, try this. And I tried it, and it worked because they were shocked because most salespeople start out the conversation with, how you doing? And then you sound like everybody else. So I immediately took this person off guard by saying, do you have a minute to talk? Well, that depends. What are you calling about? Purpose of my call today is to make you aware of a company that I'm following in Minneapolis. The stock is trading at $5 a share. This is what they do. How many shares do you want to start out with?
That's bold.
And that's how I was taught to do it. I didn't know any different, okay? And I would talk to 40 people a day. And I was averaging, I opened up on average of about 30 to 35 brand new accounts every single month after month. But here's what in the interview with Tom Vanyo, the owner of this brokerage firm, I said, so tell me about what I need to do every day. And I had previously told him in this interview, he said, so where have you been? And I said, well, I just graduated from the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. And this is what he said to me. All you have to do every day is pick up the phone, make 100 dials every day, and paint a picture in the mind of the listener of what you're trying to communicate. And I got it because I've been in art my whole life. I could easily paint verbal pictures in the mind of the listener. And that's what I did. And that's why I was so successful. And also, I wasn't afraid to ask for the business. Well, I was, but I did it and it worked. And that's how and that's what I love. I love the hunt. And that's where prospecting comes in.
Well, let me stop you here then. So
Yeah.
let's talk about 2015, because there's one of these ads that pops up on the internet all the time that says things like cold calling's dead. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. What do you say to that?
It's not dead. You see, and here's the thing, and this is what I teach salespeople all the time. If you believe that it's dead, then it truly is dead. But do you know how many salespeople actually believe that cold calling is dead? That's good for the salespeople that are willing to call. Now, if we really look at where our prospects come from, and I'm going to come back to the cold calling part, our prospects come from our warm or our natural market. They come from referrals. They come from centers of influence. They come from associations. They come from social media. They come from advertising, walk-ins, lead generation from internet marketing services, and they even come from a cold call. Now, you can get a strong referral from a customer and call that person. And in my mind, even though it's a referral, in the back of your mind, you were taught never to talk to strangers.
Yep.
That's why people say that cold calling is dead. Is it hard? Sure, it's hard. If I was to lose all of my contacts today, and I had to start over completely, I would do a couple of things. One, I'd make a list of every company in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and I would call them. I would also connect with them on LinkedIn, and I would do some other things as well. But cold calling is not dead. I work with thousands of people every year. And guess what part of their activity is cold calling. And I don't mean cold calling in the sense from the 30s, 40s, 50s, where you knock on doors. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to reaching out to people via the telephone. Does that make sense?
Yes. So in this age of voicemail, so I want to go back to that. You said back in the day, they either put you through. So how do you do it now? So lots of, like, if I do cold calling, a lot of times nobody answers.
Right.
And a lot of times it goes to voicemail.
Right. Voicemail. You know, I was driving down a freeway one day and I saw this billboard sign that says Elvis is dead. Deal with it. You know? Now, what does that have to do with voicemail? Deal with it. Okay. I have salespeople all the time coming to me and says, voicemail doesn't work. Voicemail doesn't work. Nobody ever calls me back. I ask them a question. Would you call you back? They go, what do you mean? I said, would you call yourself back? Most voicemails are irritating. They go on and on and on. People are not prepared. Okay, they're not prepared. They don't know what they're trying to communicate at all. Okay, so voicemail is a powerful tool if you understand the medium. You have 20 to 30 seconds to get the person's attention. And okay, let's look at it this way, Pat. If I called you right now on the phone and I said, Pat, I'm your neighbor. We don't know each other very well, but I'm on my way to work and I was driving by your house and I saw smoke coming out of the back end of your house. I wanted you to know that I've already called the fire department. I found the hose in your front yard. I'm spraying down the fire. Call me back at your earliest convenience. How long would it take you to call me back? How long would it take you to call me back?
Immediately.
You see, here's the problem with most voicemails. Is there's no urgency, there's no compelling reason. All right, so here's what I teach people about voicemail. Hi, this is Steve Kloyda with the Prospecting Expert. My telephone number is. That's step number one. You always leave your phone number up front. Why? Face it, when you get a voicemail, Pat, and the minute you hear a phone number, what do? You write it down, don't you?
Maybe.
Okay.
Well, sometimes, I don't mean to be argumentative here, but
Oh, you. No, you can be argumentative all that you.
see, commonly what I do is I listen to this is why I like what you were saying is I listen to the voicemail all the way through, and then I go, oops, I couldn't get the phone number down because they spoke too fast. So you go back to the front, and then I like that you have it up in the front because then I really can get it down.
And you slow down. Step number 2 is create a compelling reason. The purpose of my voicemail today, Pat, is to make you aware that we've created a unique approach around prospecting that will eliminate all the call reluctance that your salespeople experience and get you in the door. That's step number 2. Step number 3, Pat, you want to learn more about our unique approach to prospecting? Give me a call back at your earliest convenience. My phone number is, or if you would prefer to email me, you can email me at. And Pat, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this voicemail, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Awesome.
You see the difference now? I want to do something special here for your audience. I have a sound clip library. These are calls that I've collected over the past 25 years with all the coaching sessions that I've had with salespeople. I'm going to play an actual call of a person leaving a voicemail message for me, and then I'll explain.
Hi, Steve. My name is Sherry, and I am calling. Let's see. Okay. Goodness gracious. I apologize. I'm just not familiar with this carrier. Maybe I should just call you back. Thank you.
Nice, huh? Okay, so this company, I signed an agreement for this company to bring a high speed or a higher speed internet access for my employees. It was like worth $6,000 to $7,000 to them the very first year. 2 days later, I received this voicemail message in my voicemail. I called them back and I said, cancel my order. Well, why? Listen, if it's this bad on the front end, can you imagine what the wiring would have looked like? And I know people might think that that's really rude and, I'm such a hard, but no, you've got one opportunity to make a strong first impression. End of story.
I have a recording like that too. I should share it with you someday.
I'd love to hear it. It's just amazing to me. You have, and I was at I was given a presentation here a while back, and one of the individuals, I walked up to this group, and there was about 8 of them in a circle talking, and they were talking about sales, and they were complaining that, voicemail doesn't work, and one of the salesperson says, I leave voicemails all the time, and people call me back. Well, why? Well, because I leave a reason for them to call me back, number one, and so many salespeople don't leave voicemails anymore. I mean, you think about it. It's a 30-second soundbite of you, and nobody can sell you better than you.
I totally agree. I think of them as, I'm totally on this voicemail boat. I think of them as little bitty radio commercials.
Yes.
So if you leave 3 or 4 of these, and every radio commercial kind of builds upon the last one.
Yes.
I don't mean to take this away from you, but this is what I teach. This is how I see it, and I think it's very, very powerful. And you can get people to call you back.
That's it. Now, there's a caveat to this. You may or may not have read this. 3 months ago, Coca-Cola issued a press release that said, now this is in their corporate headquarters in Atlanta, that they said, as of this day, we have eliminated all voicemail inside of our company. You will no longer be able to leave us a voicemail. We think it's an ineffective technology based on our times. If you want to get a hold of us, you send us an email, get a direct phone number, or check us out on the web, but you can no longer leave a voicemail. Now, where's voicemail going? I don't know. Where's Twitter going? I don't have any idea. Facebook and all these tools. So we need to really change with the times.
Right. But that day is not today. That day today, it's about you can connect with people.
Yes, you can.
I think 1 out of 10, 1 out of 12 times you're going to connect with somebody on the phone.
Yes, you will.
And the rest of the time, you're going to go to voicemail.
Yes.
And gatekeepers are very helpful, too. That's another thing I found sometimes. What advice do you have for me to catch Mr. Smith?
That's it. What advice do you have? And why is that so hard? I think the best example, can we talk about Gatekeeper for a minute?
Sure.
I think the best example that I've ever seen of a gatekeeper approach is the Bud Fox, Gordon Gekko, the original Wall Street movie in 1987.
Yeah.
Bud Fox called Gordon Gekko every day at 4 p.m. And Natalie's Gordon assistant said to Bud, how many times do I have to tell you that Gordon only works with investment bankers? Did that deter Bud Fox? No, he continued to call. Then he shows up. He's got a creative approach here. He shows up on Gordon's birthday with a box of cigars, walks up to Natalie's desk. He says, "You're more beautiful than I ever thought." Oh. She looks up. He did not say he was Bud Fox. She looks up and goes, "What are you doing here?" She had recognized his voice because of all the calls that he had made, built a relationship with her. He finally gets in to see Gordon. Gordon looks at his trader and says, "The kid calls me 59 days in a row and wants to be a player. So when do you give up?" Well, if you never give up. And then Gordon looks back at Bud and says, "What's on your mind? Why am I listening to you?" If your listeners today take nothing else away from this interview, this podcast that we're doing, when you approach somebody, you've got less than 30 seconds. They want to know what's on your mind. What is on your mind? Why should I even listen to this voicemail? Why should I even read your tweet? Why should I even read your email on LinkedIn? Why should I even listen to this phone call? It's a great, great part in the entire movie.
I think these are great questions to ask because it's something that you said before, Steve. It was something along the lines like people don't know what they're calling. They don't know what they're about. They don't really understand their ideal clients, their avatar, their prospects.
No, they don't.
That's why she's stumbling. That's why that poor lady's, God bless her.
I felt bad for her.
I know.
I felt bad for her.
What a horrible position she's in.
Right. I mean, she's got no information. And the biggest mistake that I see salespeople make daily is they not properly prepared for their day or properly prepared for the call.
Yeah, you have to know why you're calling, what value you're trying to add to their business, to their lives.
That's because there's so much noise out there, and you've got one shot.
Is sales a good business to get into?
I love sales. Yes, it is a good business.
How come?
Because there's freedom, because you have an opportunity, every single day to improve yourself. My very first sales meeting with Tom Vanyo, downtown Minneapolis, I'll never forget what he said. He said, "Work hard on yourself every day. Work on your skills. Work on your questioning skills." I had no idea some 35 years later, you and I would be recording a podcast together. And the thing about sales is you can design it and make it what you want. You have the freedom to make as much money as you want or as little as you want. You have the freedom to plant as many seeds as you want every single day. You have the opportunity to change people's lives. And it comes down to this. If you had the cure for cancer, how many cancer patients would you approach every day? Everybody. So whatever business that you're in, whatever product or service that you represent, how is that product or service eliminating the cancer in their life? Sales is everything. You can have the greatest product in the world. And I've seen companies when I was a stockbroker, great companies with great products, but they had a very weak sales mentality, and they would fold, and they would go out of business, and they would file bankruptcy. You can have the greatest product, but you gotta know how to communicate it and sell it to other people. And sales is not a 4-letter bad word, let me tell you.
No, it's not. Not at all. Not at all. No. How can people learn more about you, Steve?
The best place is theprospectingexpert.com. Theprospectingexpert.com. gatekeepers.com. I produce a podcast. Actually, today is Thursday. It's going to be posted in about another 4 hours. So I produce a podcast, Instant Sales Podcast. You can find me on Stitcher Radio or iTunes. But the best place to start is the prospectingexpert.com.
I highly recommend you all.
You all? I love that.
You folks.
You folks.
Of course, all those Southerners that I was talking to 2 weeks ago, they were like, oh, it's y'all. I go, no, I'm not from down. I'm a Midwesterner. From Chicago. You sure got that Minnesotan accent going, by the way.
I've got the Minnesota you betcha stuff going. We got the boat up here.
But I highly recommend listeners to listen to Steve's podcast because I've found a lot of value in it. I have been listening to you off and on for quite a while, maybe a couple of years, maybe. I would think.
That's great.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming up to me at the podcast movement. And it's just you made my day. You did. You made my day when somebody comes up to me and says,
"Dude, you're famous."
You're the dude, man. I'm the dude. It's hilarious. It really is. And I come back and I tell my wife, she said, did anybody come up to you? And I said, yes, this guy by the name of Patrick came up to me. And always makes you never know, You
never know.
Yeah.
Steve, thanks for coming to Sales Babble.
Hey, I love Sales Babble. I love the fact that we connected in Dallas. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show. And I'd like to leave your listeners with one final note of what Doc said to Marty in Back to the Future 3. He said, your future is whatever you make it, so make it a good one. Thanks so much, Pat.
At the end of Steve's podcast episodes, he always had something which he called the Sales Nugget. I just went online and took a look at his last Sales Nugget, and I thought I'd like to share it for you all today. It was called Praise Your Competitors. And he had a quote following it from Benjamin Franklin that said, I will speak ill of no man and speak all the good I know of everybody. What a great piece of advice. It's not for you to cut down your competitors. You should speak well of them. Like, yeah, they do some things really well because they do. They've earned business that you haven't. But it shows that you respect them, and it creates an opportunity for the person that you're talking to maybe ask you a little bit about your competitors. Well, do they do this and do that? And then allows you to maybe show how you differentiate from them. Slamming your competitors and telling them that all they sell is crap is not a path to success. Great wisdom from the late, great Steve Kloyda. To find Steve's podcast and his book, which will probably be up for many, many years in the future, you can find links to those in the show notes at www.salesbabble.com/277. As I mentioned in the last 4 or 5 episodes that I accidentally published too fast, I've got a marketing survey that I'm doing in regards to building a matchmaking process for business professionals, sales professionals. If you could go to the habanero.community/study link, and again, that's on the show notes. It's only about 7 or 8 questions and only take you 2 minutes. It's mostly yes/no questions. If you could help me on that, I would really appreciate it. I've been getting some great data on that, but really I would love a ton of data on that to make sure that I'm going down the right path. If you could help me out, I would deeply appreciate it. That's all I've got for this week. Until next week, take care and have a highly successful and profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.